Welcome to The Herbal Ire, your podcast on all things holistic health, medical astrology, spirituality, herbalism, and so much more. Presented by your host, Ire Atla, medical astrologist, herbalist, and naturopath. Let's dive right into today's topic, love and light. Welcome back to The Herbal Ire, everyone. I'm Ire Atla, your host, and I am here today with a very special guest. This is Sarai. Sarai is a spiritual life coach who helps everyday women live extraordinary lives. She believes in helping women share their mission and their voice on a larger scale to feel confident in their abilities and become prominent leaders in their communities. She hosts events, trainings, workshops, coaching opportunities, and communities designed to help women unleash their authentic message and reconnect with their soul's desires. She works privately with moms who are looking to merge the mommy back with the independent woman to regain a sense of self and direction so they can grow a sustainable business with consistent income. And Sarai is awesome. I'm sure you guys will find that out. Welcome, Sarai.
Thank you. Thank you. So glad to be here. And I'm looking forward to this. I can't wait. Let's do it.
Yes. Sarai actually runs a group that I'm in, the Soulpreneurs, right? Soulpreneurs group, Soulpreneur, female entrepreneurs group.
Sisterhood of Soulpreneurs. You got it.
There we go. And we actually met through some sort of networking event, and here we are. It's been a while that we've known each other now, and she is just an awesome human being. So I'm excited for you guys to get to know her today too. So tell us exactly kind of what it is that you do and what led you to that, Sarai.
Yeah, I think it's always so fun to hear people's journeys, right? And just like the whole process. I know yours is a fascinating one. And for me, it definitely began with like a health focus. I went through my own like weight loss journey of losing over 80 pounds. And through that process, I discovered, oh, wow, like not only do I have this body underneath, all of the weight, but I have confidence too. and that led me to dive into actually becoming a fitness instructor. And that is where I found coaching. And so I went, before COVID and everything went online, I went from doing in-person fitness training to online coaching, mainly for weight loss. And then through that is actually where I discovered my spirituality. So I wasn't even spiritual at all before all of that. I was like, nope, we're bags of meat and then we die and that's it. And which ironically, I know like you, like I had a previous very Christian upbringing. So it was forced to me to like believe in God, and this is what he looks like, right? And like this is the box, and this is what you need to understand and believe in. So I rebelled against that, and I went to the complete opposite, and I was like, "There's nothing." And then because I had my own spiritual awakening, and things started happening to me and around me, and all of it, I was like, "Oh." There's all of these other dimensions and worlds that are out there, and honestly, if it hadn't have really like physically happened to me, I probably still would to this day have been like, no, there's nothing there. But because I was very like scientific, and I have to see it, and I have to be able to analyze it in order to believe it. So that was just it was a very eye-opening, enlightening experience to go through. But so going through that, it's like, okay, I know that I'm now here to help others go through that as well, especially because no one else I knew had any experience like what I was going through. And I was researching, I was online, and I'm like, what happened was I was having ascension symptoms and I didn't even know it. And I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was having some sort of medical crisis, and I was like 2 seconds away from calling an ambulance to come get me. And and so like I did a lot of research, and then finally I found someone that helped me. But anyway, so to really just make that a long story longer, I had that spiritual awakening, and then now that's why I really decided to dive into spirituality, into specifically even the journey that spiritual entrepreneurs go through, and how it's just so different, and even how a woman entrepreneur is different and a mommy entrepreneur is different, than just the entrepreneur quote, entrepreneur that we are familiar with or told, that this is what it is. So yeah, that's like why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's also why I even wanted to create that sisterhood community, because it's so important that we have a space where we can go and connect, and to know that we're not alone, to share our unique perspective and experience and journey with others that are going through something at least kind of similar, so that when we're talking about the woo-woo stuff that we're going through, that, with our clients or with our businesses or whatever, people don't look at it like we have the 2, 3, 10 heads.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely relate to a lot of that, because I went through a very similar journey with mine, where I went from like super religious household to leaving on my own, and knowing that like I hadn't believed in any of that for years, but couldn't say anything out loud, right? Because that was just not acceptable in the house that I grew up in. And I really didn't want to be put out in the street at like 15 or 16 years old, which they would have done. And so when I did leave and I kind of started like my own spiritual journey, I went to the exact same thing, where it's like, nope, I'm a complete atheist. Nothing's out there. I don't, there's nothing. It's just like the exact opposite of what I grew up with. And I was pretty staunch about that for a while. And then I had my youngest daughter, and like literally died and was brought back again. And during that brief period that I was like medically dead, right before they brought me back, it was like this huge like awakening to like what was out there, and what was, all that other stuff, like the spiritual side of things. And that just literally like changed everything. And when I got home from that whole experience, finally, after, another week in the hospital afterwards, I went down like my completely different, like, woo-woo path, and been there ever since. And so, yeah, it really changed like my whole outlook on life. It changed my business. It changed what I wanted to do. It changed how I parented. Like it literally changed everything. And I really don't think I'd be where I am with my business now and where I am in my life now if I hadn't actually had that, right? So spirituality plays such a huge part in like everyday life without you really even realizing it sometimes,
Absolutely. And I think that that's even, I think that was a big missing piece in my life prior to this. And even though I didn't know it and I wasn't looking for it, once it hit me, like once I found it, I was like, oh, this is this is the thing that I was missing. And here's what's crazy. My marriage was almost over because of that. This was right around the time that I did have my spiritual awakening. It was my husband and I, we were going through it. It was all the things, like I had actually like given up, and I said, fine, like I cannot make you happy. You need to go find somebody or find a wife or something that does. And we didn't want to give up. It was very sad. Like it wasn't like out of anger. It was actually this like, I don't know what else to do. But it was because I wasn't happy in the relationship and I was looking for something. I felt like I was missing out. And I kept saying, I was like, it's FOMO or something. Like I didn't know what it was, but it just felt like there was this hole that I thought it was going to be filled when I found him, right? When I found love, I thought that hole was going to be, oh, like, look, it's resolved, right? Like that was what it was. I just needed a partner, but it wasn't, because even once I had him and we had this like solid relationship, it started to fall apart because I kept looking, because I was missing something, because I did not feel fulfilled. And once I realized that, like, and I had this really, it was like lightning, right? It was like this electricity kind of feeling of like, oh, this is what's awakened. And, oh, I'm starting to understand that it had to come from within, right? It had to be me
Mm-hmm.
to be like, okay, I needed to fix what was happening inside of me, and then fixing that is what actually allowed me to take ownership. I felt confident and strong enough to take ownership of my life and how I was
Mm-hmm.
showing up, which then helped me fix my marriage, right? So like we
Yeah.
saved it, and now we're like, we are tight, we are strong, we are unstoppable together. So I just like, for anybody that's listening, that I just want to really bring that I know I am a strong believer that I'm going to say most, because not all, right? And so there's some relationships that we don't want to say, right? Like there are some that are just unhealthy and
Some need
toxic.
to go. Yeah.
Yes, they need to go, right? But it's not really that type of marriage, and it's just something where there has been like, and I'm going to even say just partnership, right? Because it might not even be a marriage. It might be something where, you know, there's like a domestic partnership or something like that. That if it's something where you've just fallen out of sync, you've fallen away from each other, you've grown apart, I am a strong believer that you can make it work, you can fix it, but it does require both parties to do that introspection, because my husband also did a lot of that. He was willing to change. He was willing to do, you know, so like, but it definitely, it can be done. And, you know, because sometimes I work with women who are like, that's it, my marriage is over, he doesn't love me, blah, 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 all the things.
Mm-hmm.
And then even in such a, like, even in 6 months or less, we have actually been able to work it so that a relationship starts to mend, that all of a sudden, without the woman even doing anything specific, the man is coming up. He's actually saying things about, like, he's voicing his emotions, and, you know, and like talking about things that he hasn't talked about in years, right? So like, just a little, you know, little side rant there, that it is possible for lots of relationships to be saved. So if that's something that you are thinking about, that just know that there is hope, ladies.
Yeah. And that is so true. My first marriage was one of the ones that you should not be saving. So that was like doomed from the beginning, to be honest. But that was also just a life lesson that I had to go through, that sometimes, you know, what you thought you wanted is not always what you should be getting or going for, you know. And I figured that out. But in the meantime, when I was divorced and it was just me on my own and my youngest daughter and, you know, all that stuff, I took that time to really like work on me and change my inner thoughts and beliefs. And that's when I had that spiritual awakening right before that all happened. And that spiritual awakening actually is what lit the fire under me to leave that relationship, like that courage to know that I was going to be okay. But I needed to get out of that because it was very toxic and abusive, and there was not going to be a better relationship ever with that person, right? He just was never the type to be willing to admit that he was wrong, or that he had actually, you know, whether meaning to or not, caused harm toward me. And so I needed to leave. And so I did. And I honestly think that if I had not done all of that work over the 5 years of being on my own and being single and just with my daughter and spending more time working on me, my mental health, being present for her, and just focusing on that, I don't think I would have met the spouse that I have now, right? Like the universe knew that he was my soulmate, but I wasn't ready for him back in like my early 20s, right? If we had met back in our early 20s, neither one of us would have wound up together at that point, because we were just not in a space mentally and physically and emotionally and spiritually to be ready for that person, right? And so as hard as it was to go through that relationship that I went through and all the stuff that comes with an abusive relationship, I really feel in my soul that if I had not experienced that I would not be with the husband I have now that I absolutely adore, or B, in the type of relationship we have where we are actual like partners and we are true, you know, helpers of each other, and we are like, I don't know, like just complete soulmates. I would not have had that because I would not have been ready for that. I needed to go through that relationship to be ready for this one. And I actually literally manifested this relationship with my husband. I was about 2 years out from my divorce, and I had attempted to go on a few dates here and there with people, but the pickings where I was living were slim. And I was just fully discouraged, and I was just like, fine, I'll just be alone forever, universe. But at the same time, I just knew myself, and I knew that eventually I would want a partner. I was just not a type of person who was built to be like alone forever, right? And so on one of my moon rituals, I actually sat down and I wrote out what I wanted in a partner. And at the end of it, I wrote, what I really want, universe, is just is true love, someone who absolutely loves and adores me for me, and all these other things can be damned if I get that, because that is what really matters to me. It's having someone actually like me for me, because I didn't have that with my first relationship, my first marriage, right? He was always trying to change me into something he wanted me to be. That was just never going to happen, because it's not who I was, and it was just an impossibility. And I on the full moon, I took that out and I burned it in my backyard and I put it out there, and I waited. I was like, I'm not going on any more dates unless I feel they're aligned with that, or this person meets the criteria on that list. At least at the beginning, they need to meet, X amount of the criteria before I'll even consider. And so I think I dated like 2 other people in that time before he came along, and met him. We started talking, and literally on our second date, I just had this moment where we touched briefly, and like everything around me faded away except for him and I. And it was like just this circle of light around us, and a voice said to me, "You're going to marry him. He's the one." And I was like, no, he's not. This is date number 2. Like, what the fuck, right? And then we broke that connection, and it went away. And I was just like, did that even happen? Because it was just so weird, right? And I'd never had that happen in my entire life. And like literally, that was in September, October. In May of the next year, he proposed, and we've been, ever since. It's been great, and it's fabulous, and life has been so much better and different. But I got thinking about it, and I was like, it was literally 3 years to the day that I burned that paper with what I wanted on it when I had that experience where I touched him, and it was like, yep, this is it. And so I like literally manifested this dude into my life, and it's been the best relationship ever. So it's possible, definitely, to change your future and your present, actually, too. It just takes time sometimes, and like just that certainty that it's going to happen, even if it doesn't happen in the way that you maybe would have planned it to happen, right? Because I never would have gone on a date with my husband seriously prior to like just knowing that I wanted something different. We just never have been the kind of people to date each other. So it worked out.
And I think that, so like there were so many good things, like just really pivotal points that you brought up, right? I mean, first, I just want to bring up the whole, like, this is why with manifesting, it's good to get really clear, right? Like you wrote down exactly, you didn't say, this is what he needs to look like, right? But you weren't like, this is the box he needs to be in, but these are the things that I want to experience while being with him, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of that. And I think that sometimes we that's where we get a little tangled up when we think about manifesting. We're like, okay, so I want this amount in my business, and I want it to look like this, and it needs to come in this way. And it's like, or how about we just talk about that, like the feelings and the experience that you want to have, and then let it come to you in whatever way, mm-hmm. and like you just pointed out, in whatever time frame too, right? Because if you were like, he needs to arrive within the next 6 months, and mm-hmm. by this date and whatever, it's like, but instead you were just like, no, like this is what I'm manifesting, and it took 3 years to make it happen. Most of us give up before 3 years happens.
Yes. Yeah, and honestly, I think if I didn't have that absolute certainty that the universe would give me what I was mm-hmm. asking for in the time that it felt was necessary, I would have given up too. But I was just to the point that I was happy where I was and I didn't need another person. I wanted
Ding,
another
ding, ding,
person,
ding.
but I didn't need that other person. I was happy with where I was. I was happy with my life. I was happy being with just my daughter. We had a good thing going, me and her, right? Like we had a great
Yeah.
thing going. And I wanted someone who was going to add to that great thing we had going, not subtract from it or change it in any way, who wasn't going to come in and try to like fuck everything up that we had made and created. And you'd be surprised sometimes how hard it is to find somebody who wants to not do that, like who wants to just come in and just be a part of your life and not try to like change things or anything. It was so hard to find that, and I was just being very picky because I was like, no, this is not what we're doing. Right? I'm nope, not interested. If I'd go on a date with somebody and I mentioned my daughter and they were like, they had like a reaction that I didn't care for, I was like, peace, bye, sorry, that's just not okay with me. And I think me sticking to exactly what I had said to the universe really helped, because like they saw, she's actually serious about this, so she knows what she wants and she's willing to wait for it.
Absolutely. And I think that, and like for all of us, right? Like we have to be just reminded that it's exactly what you said. It comes down to how our contentment inside, right? And like
Mm-hmm.
when we are happy with where we are and who we are and what we have, then the other pieces can fill in around us instead of what I was trying to do, which was make those things make me happy, right? But like
Mm-hmm.
when I started finding my own inner peace, taking responsibility for things, it helped me create that for myself, which took pressure off of the relationship, right? It allowed the relationship to be what it wanted to be. And
Yeah.
what is so awesome is it's exactly what you said. It's like you allowed him to come into your life, right? And it's by you working on you, you got yourself into a place where he could show up. And I feel like what happened with my relationship is that when I stopped putting pressure on it, and with the internal work
Mm-hmm.
that I've done, I have allowed my husband to fully support me.
Yes.
And I know that sounds strange, and especially like if I was even like a year or two ago, I would have been like, "What are you talking about?" But when we try to, as women, right? Like when we try to do all of the things and we try to we're like, "No, this is my responsibility, and I have to carry all of this,
Mm-hmm.
all of the weight, all myself." And it's like we the right partners will have support for us. They will be there for us. They want to support us. They want to help us. But
Yes.
we're too busy trying to control it all. And it's like we actually don't let them support us, and then we get upset
Mm-hmm.
because we aren't receiving support.
Yeah.
And when I actually just really surrendered, I'm going to say, yeah, I'm going to choose the word surrendered here. When I surrendered to letting him help me and support me and take an hour in the evenings to spend with our daughter, and I was like, wipe my hands for that hour, and I'm like, you got her.
Yeah.
I'm
And didn't
seeing you,
try to
boy.
micromanage his time with her. I see that so much. Well, he
Oh,
doesn't
right.
do this, and this like I would. Doesn't matter. You're getting an hour
That's
free and he's
exactly.
he's helping you out. Let him do whatever the fuck he wants with that kid as long as he's not hurting her. Take a break.
Right. Totally. And it's not going to, right. I was exactly the same way, because I was thinking, well, he's not going to, if she needs discipline during that hour, like he's not going to do it right. And I was like, it doesn't matter, right? Like it's not going to undo all of the discipline. And when I say discipline, I just mean, like some form of, when she's 3.5, right? So like when she throws a temper tantrum, it's kind of like, how do you respond and all of that? And it's like,
Uh-huh.
Sarai, just drop it. Let him handle it. He's got this. He wants to spend time with her. Let him do it. And
Mm-hmm.
this is like me letting him support the family, right? Like, and that's
Yeah.
another thing. Like we think that all that they have to do is just go to work, right? Like they're the money maker and they can go to work, and it's like, no, they get to also share all of that family balance, that family juggling, you know,
Mm-hmm.
of the time and the house duties and things like that. Like
Yep.
we get to ask, right? Part of receiving is asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think part of what has really worked with this relationship is that we have both been very open and honest with the other person about like what we need in that moment. Like I don't hide what I need. I'm not afraid to ask him for something that I need because I know that if he can't do it, he'll just tell me that. Like he's not gonna, he's not going to shame me for needing that, but he's going to also be like, well, I can't provide that for you. Let's come up with a solution that does provide that for you, right? He may not be that person, but he'll help me figure out a solution for me to get what I need. And he's there for me. If I need something else that he can provide, he is right there, right? And he has that. And that learning to like not try to micromanage everything and just let it happen and be willing to, as you said, kind of surrender to the fact that he wants what's best for me. He wants to help, and he's an active part of this family and this relationship, and just allowing that to happen instead of trying to force things or change things or micromanage everything. I just let it happen. It's been so much better to receive that energy that he's willing to, that he's putting out, and vice versa. When he needs it, same thing happens. If he needs something, he comes to me, we discuss it, we come up with a solution if I, again, can't provide it, or, he needs something that I'm just maybe not willing to do in that moment or at all. And we lean on each other all the time. And it's just as our relationship has expanded and we've gotten, longer and longer together, I've noticed that there's like an intimacy that's forming that I've never had in my other relationships where we're sharing more of like our inner thoughts with each other, our
Mm-hmm.
inner
Inner world.
beings. And yeah, just more of that,
Yeah.
like, and it feels so different in a way, but like so good. Like it just feels so good to know that I can go to him with anything and he'll support me in whatever way he can in that moment, and vice versa, and just know that, like you said, just surrendering to that masculine energy that he's putting off and receiving it instead of trying to force it is just, it's changed our lives. Like letting him, do that energy that he needs to do, like that masculine, active energy where he needs to, be the one to like initiate change sometimes or change things in the family, or the active stuff, letting him do that while I sit back and receive and say yes and to support him. That's such a difference for me and our relationship. And I think for the longest time I really struggled with being okay with those more traditional roles, if you want to consider it, um, and just being instead of doing all the time because of my upbringing and that really strict religious household where, the men were highly praised and honored above women, and we were literally like second class citizens in my family. We didn't have a say so in anything. It was whatever my dad said went. And they expected your marriage to be that same way, where you were not necessarily in a good relationship with that partner because it was more like, well, what that partner says goes, and you don't really get a choice in it. They didn't want to hear your opinion. They didn't want to talk to you about it. They didn't care if you liked it or it was going to hurt you in some way. It was like, well, I'm in charge and this is what's going on. And so I think I struggled with it for so long because of that. I didn't want to get into that type of relationship where it was more authoritarian, even though it was supposed to be like a partnership, instead of what I have now, which is definitely a partnership.
Absolutely. Yeah. I can understand that. I had a little bit different of a reason why I didn't allow myself to feel comfortable giving into that. And when I say that, we are talking about that masculine energy,
Mm-hmm.
they being men, right? Like I'm just going to frame it in terms of the gender, right? Like, so men tend to use that, be very much in their masculine energy. And for me, that means that they in their natural, again, we're talking about a natural masculine versus an unnatural unhealthy, right? Because men can also be in that like overactive, just like we can be in that overactive masculine energy where it's the hustle, the constant go, the striving and the pushing and the forcing. But when they are in their natural masculine energy, they are also even more in touch with their emotions. They have access to them, but they also consider a woman's energy to be sacred. They might not call it that, right? But ultimately, that's what's happening. And that's why a husband like yours, a husband like mine, like men in their natural, this beautiful natural masculine energy they're like the protectors of the feminine energy, right? Like the divine feminine energy of this, allowing us to, they want to give us time. They want to give us that support so that we can be creative, so that we can be in our cyclical nature and cycles, cyclical nature and rhythms, right? And it's so beautiful. Like when we surrender to that and let it happen, well, that, like, to me, that's just where the magic is. That's where everything is. It's like, it doesn't get better than that. I can't imagine, I'm like, wow, like if there is another level, what is that level like? Because I completely agree with you that it has dramatically deepened the relationship that we have. We allow ourselves to be more open and vulnerable and more in touch with our inner worlds. And like men want to be more active in that linear path of like doing that physical action to like you said, to like change direction or whatever it might be. And I think where it really comes down to is we're taught that we should do the same.
Yeah. And I've noticed that the more I've been willing to accept that feminine energy side of me and lean more into it, the more my husband has leaned into his as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Like I've noticed a complete change in some parts of our relationship because of that, because he's more in touch with his emotions now than he probably ever was in his whole life prior to this. And he's willing to share those with me. He doesn't hold it up. He doesn't bottle it inside. He's not an angry person. Like I saw so many men growing up were just angry all the time because they couldn't express those emotions or didn't feel safe to express those emotions. And so they were instead just angry, and it turned them into, in some cases, abusive individuals, right? Because they just didn't have anywhere that they felt safe to open up to. And I've noticed a huge difference in our relationship just with me leaning into that also allows him the ability and the comfort to lean into that as well and be vulnerable.
Yes, I love that. And something that you said about when you were talking about like the you before might not have dated your husband or at that time, right? And what's interesting is that, so my husband he's always been pretty in touch with his emotions. A lot of that had to do with his upbringing. But if he was not what you would call my typical choice either, and actually it was one of those things where I was like, all right, like let's give it a shot. Okay. And
same.
Right.
I guess so I'll try it. At this point I have nothing to lose. Yeah,
exactly. That's what it was with me too. And what strangely enough happened was after a month of us dating. Now, granted, when I say dating, we were seeing each other, I don't know, like 3 or 4 times a week. So even though we had only been dating for a month, we had seen each other several times. But we wound up moving in together. And my brain was like, Sarai, this should be very scary to you. What are you doing? This goes against everything you know, right? Like, no, you need to know a person for like 6 months before you move in with all of that stuff, right? But I was not scared. Not a single ounce of my body was scared. And I was just like, something is right because I'm not scared. It was weird, right? It was just, I was like, there's something here that I'm just going to lean into, and I'm going to trust this. And so I just think it's like, funny how he's definitely not like the typical person. But what I realized, like in this journey, is that how many of us women have the box of like, this is the man I want, and he needs to fit into this box. And because and I used to do this is how come I'm bringing this up, is because I used to be like, oh, he's not masculine enough. And if I was judging my husband, I would have said, he's not masculine enough. And that's really interesting to me, because again, I think that we go back to what we are trained to believe about even ourselves, right? In terms of like, how should I be as a woman? I need to be independent. I need to be driven. And we have all these things. And it's like, but what we're trying to do is live this unhealthy, masculine, energetic life. And then we judge our men, the men that truly are here, that want to support us, that are like really living these beautiful lives. And we're like, oh, well, you're not, you don't fit inside of this masculine box.
Yeah.
So I think that I don't need you in my life, and we turn an eye to him, a shoulder. And it's just like, that's what needs to change. I wanted to bring that up because it was just something that came to me right now. So
yeah, no, I had it's funny that you mentioned like you guys moving in together so quickly, because girl, that is like our exact same fucking story. So like, we met in September and started dating, and I was, of course, like, I have a kid. He was a single dad. He had kids. So like, it was definitely like on the down low that we were even seeing each other, because we have to both get babysitters to even see each other, which I don't know if you've ever tried getting a babysitter for just one kid. That's hard enough, but we have a medically fragile kid, and there was 2 on his end that he definitely needed one. There was a teenager, so he didn't really need it, but still, you need a someone to watch your medically fragile child. I needed to get a sitter. Like, getting 2 separate sitters at the same time for special need kids was just like not easy to do. So we definitely, did a lot of like phone dates or video chat dates, because getting physically together in the same place was not always easy. But so we met in September, we were dating, and I had my birthday. His birthday's a week before mine in October, and mine's in November. So we celebrated our birthdays together. We managed to, my daughter was with her bio dad, and his kids ended up being like on the same weekend as mine with their bio moms. And I was like, oh my God, it's like never happens. Let's go out for our birthday. So we went out for our birthdays and celebrated. And so that was like around like November-ish time, October, November, somewhere in there. I don't remember the exact date. And we were just, we were fine. I was happy that way. But it was just so hard to get together with him. That was one of my biggest thing in this whole thing, was that. But I also, at the same time, didn't want to introduce my daughter and him with his kids too early, because I didn't know where this was going, and I didn't want people we didn't want people in our kids' lives that were, maybe not going to be there forever. I didn't want to bring people in and out of her life all the time. I just felt that was not something I wanted for my daughter, was to see her mom have a revolving door of people that were constantly in and out. I didn't think that was setting the kind of model that I want it to be. So I was really cautious. And honestly, out of all the people that I dated in those 5 years, she'd met like one. and that was only because at that point we had been dating for like 3 to 6 months, somewhere in there. And so I was like, okay. So in this case, it was like we were 3 months in, and I was like, well, I think maybe it's time, because I feel comfortable with him, and this is obviously getting serious. I'm spending every waking moment thinking about him, talking to him, texting him, messaging him, we were spending almost every night after the kids went to bed video chatting so we could at least get a few minutes together at night every day. And I was like, okay, so we arranged like a meetup, and so we all kind of met each other. And of course my daughter just is like, she was 5 at the time. She just didn't really care one way or the other. She's like, oh hi, yeah, mom has a friend, great. She ran off with the kids and they were like, that was it. And like a month after that, I was at work one day and I get a message from him. Some stuff had happened. I'm not going to talk about it on here because that's his personal stuff, but some stuff had happened and he needed a place to stay overnight. And so I immediately, without even hesitating, he had just mentioned something about getting a hotel, and I messaged back, "Don't get a hotel. Just come stay at my house. I have a guest bedroom and extra space for the kids, all that stuff. I have a couch that pulls out into a bed. Like just come here, and it'll be nicer than a hotel. And I have a huge backyard with a playhouse. And I think the kids would be happier here than a hotel." And he said back, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes." And he came that night with the kids, and we did dinner and all the stuff. Everyone went to bed, and it was like really nice because we got to actually like sit up together after the kids went to bed and like have a conversation in person. And I was like, wow, this just feels so comfortable and safe. And prior to meeting him, there was not a single person that I dated or knew that I would have messaged that back to. I didn't feel comfortable enough with them to be like, hey, just come to my house instead, right? And girl, from that moment on, he never left.
Love that.
Yeah, he came that night and that was it. Like he actually he never left officially. Like he left to go pick up clothes from his house and do things like that, but that was it. He basically moved in, and we've been together ever since then. And it's always been so comfortable and safe. He always made me just feel safe. Like, and
yes.
I just hadn't ever had that with anybody, and including my parents. I never felt safe with them either because so much shit happened in my childhood where they allowed things to happen by being negligent in some cases, and other times just being plain old ignorant and not willing to see, things that were in front of their face, that I never felt safe even with them. And so I never had that feeling before. It was a really strange feeling at first to realize that being with him in his presence made me feel safe, and it made me feel comfortable, and it made me want to be with another person, like actually be in his presence all the time. And I still feel like that. This is 6 years later of dating and almost 5 married, that I still just always want to be around him because he makes me feel so safe and comfortable and able to be myself, that I actually dislike being away from my husband for like the first time, like ever, anybody I've ever dated or anything. I actually don't want to just be away from him all the time. Like, this is why I think our lifestyle works so well for us, is that we really actually enjoy being around each other. Like, we enjoy each other's presence. And so we can live in a tiny ass van and be okay and not fight all the time, because we just really have finally found our people that make us so safe and comfortable feeling, and actually dislike it when we're away from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you're, I know, like I have that understanding of what you're talking about, because I would say so it's fascinating because at the beginning of the relationship that I have with my husband, that's how we were. But then it was, I went through my own like emotional, spiritual turmoil and crisis. And then I found it again. And so it's like we reconnected again, right? He was there always, like for somebody who, like, if anybody is listening and they're like, understand about the term holding space. So like, there's a lot of us that understand that, and we can hold space for somebody like without that judgment, and and understand, especially like if we're in the service type of business and we're offering like that to clients. But for men, I don't think that a lot of men understand that. But even with that limited understanding of it, he did the best he could to hold space for me while I went on that journey, right? So I think a lot of times, even women, like I think a lot of us, we judge it when it's happening, right? Like a partner needs us to hold space for them, and we're like, what are you doing? Figure your shit out. Come on, join me. Why aren't you doing all the work? You know, like, we judge it on all sorts of levels, but he really did an amazing job for somebody who, like, he doesn't even, I don't even know if even right now he understands the concept of holding space, but he did an amazing job of trying to do that while I was going through it. So like that's something that I'm just bringing up because I think it's something that we forget, that like when somebody is going, especially when we agree to be in a partnership with someone, right? It's like part of our job is to hold that space, that non-judgmental, uh, sacred unknowing, even, right? Like we can be in that weird transition or like that time of where like, I don't know what's going to happen. But if we just try to approach it from this, like, hey, listen, I would want that person to hold, regardless of however they're acting, I would want that person to like not judge me if I was going through it, you know? So that's kind of always how like I try to approach things. And I'm just grateful that he also did his best to approach it. And you know, and anyway, so like it's really interesting, you know, it's so fascinating to kind of like see all of this interplay and how it weaves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that when you mentioned that about the holding space, that's something that, yeah, mine is very good at doing too. And again, I don't think he would ever call it that
Right.
personally, but that's definitely, now that you've said that, that's definitely what's happened. And we're very good at doing that for each other. So, you know,
Mm.
like if he's needing more from the relationship or just he's going through something personal or whatever, I'm really, you know, we're really good at saying, okay, well, since you need the time to figure out X, then I'm going to take over doing this, 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 and this. So that takes
Mm-hmm.
it off your plate so that you can really focus on whatever X is, right? And then when X is fixed, repaired, you know, able to be managed better, whatever the situation was, then we work out, okay, do you want these duties back? Do you like it how it is? Do we need to keep it this way? And we really like work through like, okay, now what, you know, what are we doing now that we have this, you know, potentially like new normal? And it works really well that I know that if I'm going through something and I need, you know, him to take something off my plate, he will, and vice versa. Like I don't have to worry about, you know, feeling like I have to do it all while also having some kind of a crisis, you know, that he's there for me, and it's great. And I really wish everybody could have that. And I just have so many people in my life that I know that don't have that with their partner. And it makes me sad because it's been such a great thing in my life that I want everyone else to have it in theirs. But I know we're all in different, you know, areas of our evolution and who we are as human beings. And sometimes we have to go through those hard life lessons to, you know, get to a point where like I am now. And so I try not to like interfere, but sometimes I want to be like, oh my God, you know, and it's so
Yeah.
hard not to try to like change things for other people because I do see, you know, them in the place that I was prior to, you know, this when I was in my previous relationship, and, you know, even my life with my parents growing up and how terrible that was. Like it makes it hard, but I really do appreciate what I have now with my partner, and he just really is such a great human being. He's probably listening to me right now, rolling his eyes, going, "Oh my fucking God, why are you like, you know, putting me on
What?
this pedestal over here and telling people all these lies?" But they're not lies. This is how I view him. If he doesn't view it this way himself, I'm sorry, but this is how I view him, and this is who he is to me, you know?
Yeah, you know, and I mean, like I totally agree that everyone is on their own journey. You know, but I do also believe that if we listen to the nudges, right? Like the small little intuitions, the small little things that come up, then we have a better chance of allowing ourselves to receive an experience that can be beautiful. I'm just saying it like that because like that's the best way that I categorize what happened, right? Like if I would have let my logical brain choose, I would have been like, absolutely, we are not doing that. Absolutely not. We are not doing that. It's not happening. When it came down to even like saying yes to the date and like, like doing all of that, it wouldn't have even been a yes. So, but it was just one of those things where it was like, just listen, like just tiny soft nudge of like, let's do this. Let's go here. Let's try this. Even if I should be scared, I'm not, and I'm going to trust it. It was just kind of like those little things that the more that we can do that and honor our own inner authority over whatever programming is in our brains, if we can just honor that inner authority and listen to those like the low deep in our body type of decisions,
that gut feeling.
It's like I really do believe that we give ourselves a better chance to have beautiful things and experiences come into our lives like that.
And let's talk about how hard that is for women sometimes to trust that instinct in this society that we live in. Because like you said, we're really kind of pushed and taught anymore. We have to be on all the time and in our active masculine energy. And so we don't learn, like, I feel it used to be a thing that was taught to listen to that intuition that you hear, that gut feeling, whatever you want to call it, and live in such a way that that is like an active part of your life, that you listen to it and you follow it and you let that kind of be your guide, and instead of trying to always be on and be something that you're really not. And that is just something that I just see with a lot of my clients, and maybe you do too, is that they just don't trust themselves or their bodies to be able to even hear that intuition at first when we start working together. Or if they do hear it, they're like, oh, well, that can't be right. And they don't trust that it's telling them the right thing because it's not a logical conclusion, right? It sounds illogical to them, so that can't be the right thing. But the more they learn to listen to what sounds like this illogical voice in their head or that gut feeling, the more I've noticed that they start listening all the time and their lives change, because they start realizing that whether it makes logical sense or not, it's improving their life by listening to it, right? And following it and living in that energy instead of trying to be something that they're not. And so that's something that I had to work a lot on too, because again, with my upbringing, everything about like who I was so skewed that I didn't even know who I was. I had to do so much work on just figuring out like who I really was and what I wanted, and to listen to my body and trust that it knew what it was doing, and to follow those little nudges, like you said, instead of ignoring them, because again, that they don't always make logical sense. That it took me years. And so I can understand to a point like where they're coming from and how hard that is. But honestly, that was one of the best things that I ever did in my entire journey so far on this earth, was learning to trust my body and my instincts again, and listen to what it said and follow it, no matter how illogical it seemed at that moment. Because again, if I'd followed my logic, I wouldn't have dated my husband. I just would not have gone on a date with him. He was not my type at all. If you want to, it was not even anybody who would have ever been on my radar.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, something I've realized recently, I realized this. I lived I would say pretty much my whole life, as far back as I can remember, relatively speaking. I might have a couple memories of when I was like 3, but like, let's say from the age of 5 and older, I have realized that I have pretty much lived with, I'm going to say this like low level, or the other way to say it is high functioning anxiety. And I would never prior to last year, I would never have said that I was somebody with anxiety, because in my head, I always classified it as someone who needed medical intervention, let's say, like needed to have some sort of, medication, or couldn't breathe, and, and like things like that, because I was thinking of the really worst case scenarios with anxiety. And so I never considered that I had it. But now that I actually have experienced some very worst case scenario anxiety last year, I went through a lot of that. And then this year and this is part of part of the work that I do with clients, is healing that divine feminine energy, because we live in this like wounded energy, which it shows up as procrastination. It shows up as not completing tasks and things like that, right? And it's being inconsistent and things like that. So what I realized, though, is that I never, for the most part, didn't really remember ever living in my body without anxiety. Like, what does feeling safe in my body actually feel like? I had to reacquaint myself with that, with what does that feel like. And it was a lot of, like the resetting of getting back out into nature, of slowing the fuck down, of basically refusing to partake in even marketing and promoting and doing business stuff in this pressure. You have to show up and you have to do all these things, and you have like this, the masculine way to do business and be the entrepreneur, and I'm going to even say the masculine way to mommy. What the fuck, yo? Like, I didn't even realize that was a thing. Like, that doesn't even make sense to me, but there is that toxicity there. And so when I really started to look at this, I was like, I've pretty much lived the majority of my life in anxiety, and I didn't even know it. So I actually think, before you had mentioned even something about like when we have to ask, we have to know when to ask. And I think that's part of the problem, is that sometimes we don't even know when to ask for support, because we are so used to not having it. We are so used to running full steam ahead, always on the go, that we don't even know that it's not okay. Or maybe we know, but we think it's normal, right? Like, we're like, oh, like I'm on burnout, or I'm almost on burnout, but aren't we all?
Yeah. Well, it's almost like a badge of honor anymore. Yeah, if you're not talking about how much you're hustling, or you're not talking about how much you're doing all the time, or you're not talking about how burned out you are from, working 60 hours a week and managing the house and the kids and all the other stuff that comes with, having a life outside of a job, then people act like something's wrong with you. Like, they literally are like, what do you mean? Like, they're asking me, what are your kids doing tonight? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? Well, they don't have any activities. Like, we don't put them in anything unless they ask and they really want to do it. So, no, we're not doing anything. I'm going home and enjoying time with my family.
Yeah,
we might do, movie and game night. Yeah. What do you mean you don't work 40 hours a week? No, I don't. I don't want to. Like, in my business, I work anywhere from like 10 to 15 hours a week. And that's like in the business, like on the business stuff. When I'm seeing clients regularly and stuff like that, like there's obviously more involved in that, so I might work more. But like, I work just 10 to 15 hours a week, like actually on my business and marketing and all that stuff. And the rest of it is time with my family or time with my clients. And I still don't work 40 hours a week. I think even when I'm seeing, clients regularly, which I've slowed down on that because of stuff going on right now. But even then, it was like maybe pushing like 20 to 30 hours a week tops. And I spend time with my family. We travel all the time. We, I'll work in the mornings and then we'll go out and go hiking for the rest of the day. Like, people just don't understand. They're like, well, don't you guys get bored? Don't you get tired of spending time with each other? No, I don't. I enjoy my kids so much more now since we've started living this way, because we're living more in tune with like what I actually want. I actually want, to do that kind of thing and not work as much. My husband's happy to go work like 40, 50, 60 hours a week. He likes that. He enjoys that. That's what he wants to do. Does he? No, because he also wants to spend time with his family. But if he did, I don't think it would be a super big deal for him. Like, he personally would be okay with spending a little bit more time at work, but he owns his own business too, and he works maybe 20 hours a week, and most of that is outdoors building shit for his clients. So that's exhausting. That's why he really only works that much, is because it just tires him out, and then he needs to rest. But yeah, like we don't participate in that hustle culture, and I don't want to. I don't wear it as a badge of honor to be so busy that I'm completely burned out, not sleeping, and my nervous system is completely deregulated. Yeah, I said I don't wear it as a badge of honor anymore to like live in that hustle culture. I don't want to, and I just don't. We just don't do it anymore.
Yeah, I love that, and it's the same thing with me and my, I guess, like my journey of through business, and I think part of that though is also when I allowed myself to really be supported by my husband, right? Like it was, that's why I even wanted to bring that up, because that was a key piece, that if I didn't let that happen, I was even putting so much pressure on myself to be productive and make sure I made the money, because I needed to. In my head, I was like, well, I need to prove that I'm doing something while he's at work slaving away, doing the, really working hard, and like while he's doing that, I needed to prove that I was being productive and doing at least something, and so that was the struggle, because with my upbringing, it was so important that I be independent and that I live the American dream, and and I do all the things, and which is there is value in that, but it was also taught to me in an unhealthy way, right? Like where it created and I'm a projector, and I know like you're a reflector, right? So it's like we don't even know when to stop, right? Like at least a generator knows, like, okay, I'm gonna like stop because I'm tired and I'm gonna go to sleep. No, I didn't know to go to sleep. I was like, no, like I can keep going. I can keep going all day. I would, and I would go in through the night, and I would just go until I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. And it's just there, that's the part to unlearn. That's the part that needs to be reprogrammed, and that's where I feel like the spirituality of learning to spend time with myself, regaining a relationship with myself, or maybe even just having one to begin with, being comfortable sitting in silence, stillness. That's the one. It's the stillness that was always the hardest for me. Oh my God, right? And like getting out into nature and just allowing my, we don't even do that enough, to the point where do we really know what our energy feels like when we're not being invaded by other people's energy, right? Or even like, do we ever get to a point where we are still and alone enough that we detox all of the energy out of our system, right? Like I think of it as like kidneys, right? It's almost like your aura has to filter it all out, and then you have to get into a place where everything is still energetically. It's like meditating. Like that's why you need like 20 minutes to meditate, because the first 5 minutes you're fighting with your thoughts. The next 5 minutes, it's like you try to get to a place of peace, and then after that is when like the more of like the intuitive stuff starts to come in. At least that's been some of my my journey with meditating. But yeah, I mean, it's like, but like, how often do we allow ourselves to even get to that place?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I feel that this is why we actually do spend so much time in nature. I have 5 planets in Scorpio, and my husband is a triple like water sign native. He's a Scorpio sun, a Pisces moon, and a Cancer rising. and I have a Scorpio sun and moon. And so I just find that personally, both of us need like a fuck ton of time in nature, because we, being water signs like that, are just so receptive to other people's energy and picking up on it. And then with me being a reflector, like on top of that in the human design thing, I pick up so much shit that does not belong to me, and trying to figure out what's actually mine and what doesn't belong to me is impossible for me to do when I'm like constantly keeping myself busy. I literally can't even like separate it. I have to get out in nature and like, let nature cleanse away all the stuff that doesn't belong to me. And then I can go, oh, okay, this is actually mine. So let's deal with that now, because now I know for sure that it's mine and not, doesn't belong to somebody else.
Right. Right. And then even what you brought up about, because this is like, I could go on for hours about this, when we do the same thing to our kids by like having them do all the activities and like, have them in this, have them in that, running from here, running to there. We keep them busy. We are literally training them just to go right into hustle culture. Like, here you go. I'm setting you up for a lifetime of anxiety and pressure. And then, and then we wonder why they have the anxiety at such a young age, and why are they stressed? Why are you stressed? You're 7, but it's like, well, this is why.
They never have time to themselves to figure out what's theirs, what's not. They don't have time to really sit down and breathe or relax, and that's not good for anybody.
And like even creativity. This is something that so this is something else is I've realized. It's funny, you were talking about working and how like you like to like kind of back out and give yourself a lot of room, right, and a lot of space, and you don't really want to do much like a lot of hours in work. And so what I realized, especially like with a lot of my clients, is we tend to, and this is especially with me and my schedule, I also only have about 13, 15 hours a week of work, but that is not by choice. And the same thing happens with my clients, is that like we tend to have very limited time because of like the extra duties and things. And and I have actually found that I really enjoy work. And what it is that I enjoy the creative process, right? Like maybe not getting started. I look at a project. I'm like, okay, I want to do this workshop. Oh God, like maybe at first I kind of have like a few grunts or whatever. But then it's like, and I'm gonna say this. It's like making bread. If you've ever made bread, right? It's like when you first start to put it together, you have all these weird ingredients that don't seem like they're gonna mesh together. You start kneading it, and you're like, how on earth is this going to turn into bread, right? Then you put it to rest. Maybe you freeze it. Maybe you put it in the fridge, whatever. You take it back out and you knead it some more. You start to kind of see it come together. You put it back to rest and, cool off. And then you do it again and you're like, oh my God, you're like, this is true. Like, this is really cool. Like, look at this beautiful thing that's happening. And then you bake it. And then you're like, this is the most amazing thing ever, right? That to me is what it's like when I'm working on something. I'm like, at first I'm like, this is weird. I don't even see how all the pieces are going to make sense. And then I'm halfway through it. I'm like, oh, this is starting to come together. Ooh, I'm getting excited. And then at the end, I'm like, that was like so good. I'm so proud of myself. I made this beautiful course, or I did this workshop and this was so amazing. And, it's like you get to go through that creative process. And I just realized that, when I have limited hours, I sometimes don't always get to experience that to the level that I want to. So that's where I come in with like a little bit of like doing it for myself, but also doing it for clients, where we work with that, right? Like we work with being creative and allowing yourself to grow your business with a limited mom schedule, But it's just so funny.
And what I've noticed, speaking of that creativity, is that since we started homeschooling and traveling more, where our school schedule is, let's just be honest, very erratic, because if it's a travel week, we're just not doing much like formal schooling, right? Because we're on the road, we're traveling. So a lot of our schooling at that point is, hey, we stopped and saw this cool historical site and we learned about it, and the kids would report, and we looked up some more on Google, or we watched a YouTube video about it, or, it's much more like loose and stuff. That I've noticed while we're traveling, when we first started, our kids had been in school. We were just transitioning from traditional school to homeschooling and traveling. And I noticed that we were traveling, like on travel days to get places, that they were complaining constantly about how bored they were, and they were done with their tablets. They were tired of looking at them. They didn't want to do that anymore. They didn't want to read. They didn't I was like, well, how about you color? Here's, I had all this activities. They didn't want to do any of those activities that required them to have any sort of like, like moment where, like you said, they're just still and they're quiet and they're just letting their brains go, being imaginative, because they were so used to not having that. We were getting up at 5:30 in the morning every day for a year so that I could get to work on time and they could get to school and all this stuff, that they had gotten so used to kind of like the hustle. And then I worked Monday through Friday. My husband worked Monday through Friday. So then Saturday, Sunday, instead of spending time together, we were going to the grocery store to get the groceries handed. We were cleaning the whole fucking house. We were meal prepping for the week so that when we got home, we could actually eat dinner at home instead of eating out every night. And I realized that, like, when we started traveling, they were bored because they were just not used to having a lot of downtime, because we were always doing something. We weren't really hustling in the fact that they had a lot of activities. We were just gone from the house.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. And now here it is 4 years later that we've been traveling on the road. When we travel, my daughter's in the back seat and she's drawing. Like, she does digital art and she does, like, physical, with pencils and stuff, art. So she'll be drawing it. She has a whole notebook now that she has filled, and then some more that she's starting, of just her art that she has drawn and the stuff that she wants to make. And she has a whole album on her phone just filled with all the digital art that she's made. And she's creating things, and she started a business last year of like of selling the stuff that she's created, and she's using, like, trying out different mediums. Now, part of that is the fact that she's a manifesting generator and they like to hop from one thing to another. So she definitely has that going for her, where like one day she wants to do something with clay, but the next day she wants to paint, and the day after that she's like, more feel like digital art today. And then she learned how to crochet, and she's been weaving stuff, and like just literally like this creativity is just spilling out of her. And the other kids too are just like, I mean, creativity everywhere, just spilling out. My older daughter decided she wanted to be like a tattoo artist, and she's been tattooing things on her fake skin that we got her. And she's been drawing
Love
pictures.
that.
She's been an artist for years, but she's gotten more into it because she's, and she has, again, started notebooks full of art and like all this stuff. And the kids are just, they're much more imaginative. They'll play for hours by themselves now outside. They'll come up with things and they're out exploring, and they're more willing to try things for the first time that they weren't willing to do before. And it's just, I've seen them blossom in a way that I don't think I ever would have if we had stayed in that rat race hustle culture that we were living, because that was the norm and what we were used to. I don't think if we had changed our lives so drastically, I don't think I would have seen that side of my kids. And it's so amazing to see that side of my kids. Like, it's so cool to see them really just leaning into who they are, leaning into that creativity. And it's been awesome. And so, yeah, I'm with you. I think the more time we find to spend on ourselves and just have that stillness, that we find a side of ourselves that we maybe didn't even know that we actually had, that, was part of our being.
And I think it's so important what you brought up about, it's just like with meditating and like with all of this, right? It's like you have to kind of get past that uncomfortable part, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like with anything, even with losing weight, with anything, right? Like you start something, and then maybe you have some motivation to change or to start it at the beginning, and like you're moving, you're doing all the things or whatever to, you're staying on track. But then you hit that point where you either get bored, or you like maybe you're not seeing the results, or like there's just something that some sort of block that you hit. And then most of us, that's when we give up and we're like, oh, this isn't working, you know? But if you like, if at that point you saw that your kids were bored and like you somehow gave in, and when I say gave in, I don't even know what that would look like, but you know, you somehow like you do something to swoop in and save them from being bored, that would prevent them from then discovering this beautiful side of themselves, right? And I think it comes down to exactly what you were saying about when we spend time with ourselves. Yeah, ladies, it's uncomfortable as fuck. Like it does not, it is hard at first.
Yes.
Especially if you've never really connected with yourself, and if you've never slowed down, and if you've always been on the go, and if you've all like, yeah, it's uncomfortable and it's weird, and it might seem totally awkward, and you might even tell yourself nothing is happening, you know, but you just have to keep going. It's the consistency of just spending time with yourself, just showing up for yourself. It doesn't even matter what is happening. It's not that you have to meditate every single day of your life. It's not that you have to do journaling, blah, 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 blah. It's just the act of showing up and spending time with you. If you put yourself as a non-negotiable every day, just 15, 20 minutes, something, start with something. If you do that, that is what will make the difference. That's the breakthrough of just no matter what, every day I'm going to do something. It doesn't matter what, but I'm going to spend time with myself to build a relationship. It helps everything. It helps your inner child, right? She stops resisting so much. There's so much benefit to it. And I'm 100% with you that it is the difference between a fulfilled life and a life that's just asleep, where you're asleep at the wheel.
Yeah. And it just kind of goes on autopilot right past you. Yeah. No, we're on the same page with that, girl, which I knew because we talk all the time. So I wanted to share all of your wisdom with everyone on here because you have so much of it to share, and you always bring something out every time we talk that's like a truth bomb of some sort. So I felt it was time to have you on here so that you could drop those on some of the listeners as well. But I am so glad that you were here today and that we were able to connect like this. Can you let everybody know where to find you if they want to look you up or possibly work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, join the Sisterhood of Soulpreneurs. Even if you're not currently having your own business, it's just a wonderful, wonderful community. And you will definitely find like-minded women that hang out there. And we love to talk and engage with each other. So please feel free to drop us a line. I also have a Mom Biz Life group where I offer free trainings, coachings within the group regarding this, helping to balance ourselves, not just on the time front, but also emotionally balance ourselves on this journey. And and you can reach out to me there on Facebook, Instagram, The Witchy Coach. And I am here for anybody that needs. I can, also drop my links. And I want to thank you so much, Ira. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you do, all of the inspiration and the community vibe that you also bring. You are a wonderful and cherished friend and colleague.
Thank you. I love spending time with you. Every time we get together, y'all, I'm telling you, it's like crazy. I know your sun sign is Aries and I don't remember the rest, but seriously, every time we get together, between my Scorpio, like always wanting to go super deep, and her, I think projector in her too, like really I don't think we ever have had a conversation that doesn't involve one or both of us crying at some point or really digging up some kind of like truth that even we were hiding from ourselves. Like seriously, I'm telling you, if you need somebody to help you with any of that stuff or the emotional side of business, because let's be honest, as women, there is an emotional side in business for us, and you're struggling with something, she is your girl. So look her up. I'll put all the links in the show notes for you. We will catch you guys later. Love and light. That's it for another great episode of The Herbal Ire. Tune in next week for more valuable content with your host, Ire Atla.